Yo, what's going on? It's your boy, Hot Boy, back again with another spicy video for you guys today. And by another, I mean my second video. Okay, so jumping right into the topic at hand, Star Wars Episode 8 has been out for a little while now, and everyone and their mother has made videos addressing some of their problems with the film. So I thought that instead of regurgitating the same stuff you've probably already heard by now, that this would be the perfect time to flex my arrogant opinions on what should be altered or swiped completely in place of a new scenario that I feel would have made this movie a lot better. But before I get into that, I want to address something right out of the gate. I've seen numerous videos all with the same striking issue with this movie, and that is the subplots. The two in question being the Finn and Rose going to Gamble Planet stuff and the whole Poe mutiny stuff. And I get it, these sections of the movie are dumb, boring, and ultimately serve no purpose in progressing the plot. But I feel a lot of people's main issues with the movie revolve around these scenes. And while I see where they're coming from, the problems that I'm going to talk about later are far more crucial to me. Surprisingly, none of the Star Wars movies are objectively very good. If you want some deep and interesting plot stuff, go watch Clone Wars. These are the Star Wars movies. Sometimes so bad that you want to cringe just thinking about it, but then you remember that one lightsaber fight from the same movie and it's all Gucci. And everyone praises the original trilogy like it's God's gift to Earth, and trust me, I love these movies too, but are we just going to pretend like we forgot about the Ewoks and Return of the Jedi? I mean, they do actually help a little to further progress events in the story, more than these events in The Last Jedi can say, but still these stupid little furries have way more screen time than they actually should and take away from the cool stuff in the movie. Actually, if you look at every Star Wars film, they all have some filler moment or a couple that really are only there to fill time, which really, if you think about it, doesn't make a whole lot of sense because many of these movies cut out actual interesting stuff to save time, but kept this crap in. Anyway, I'm starting to get off topic here. The point is, I disagree with the notion that these subplots are the main issue with the movie. So what is my main issue with Episode 8, you might be wondering? Well, to put it simply into one word, the characters. Specifically Luke, Rey, Kylo Ren, and Snoke. And so, as the title of this video suggests, I'm going to change these characters and how they interact with each other, while in effect changing the narrative to attempt to make this film better in my eyes. And I stress in my eyes because you, the viewer, may disagree, and that's perfectly okay. It just leaves more room for discussion. So how I'm going to do this is first explain what scenes I don't like and what about them I think needs changing. Then after that, I'll throw in my own version of the movie that will fix these issues. Simple enough? Okay, let's go. So starting off from the flashback we see when Luke explains what exactly turned Ben to the dark side. It's explained here that Luke saw that Snoke had already tainted Ben's mind and then saw the terrible things that he would do. Luke had a moment of fear and ignited his lightsaber, resulting in Ben's full transformation into Kylo Ren. I'll be honest and say at first I thought this was stupid. Like, Luke Skywalker did that, a character that went on a suicide mission to try and turn his full-fledged Sith father into a good guy again and defeat the Emperor of the Galactic Empire. It felt out of character that this same guy would even think for a second killing the son of his best friend and twin sister. But the more that I thought about it, the more my opinion changed. Luke had definitely had a moment of frailty, one that led to his semi-demise, but it's shown in this same flashback sequence that as soon as he ignited his lightsaber, he instantly regretted reacting to his own fear. This actually isn't uncharacteristic of Luke at all. As we've seen in Return of the Jedi after Vader provoked him, Luke tapped into the dark side in order to defeat him. But then when Luke had the option of finishing everything right then and there, he dropped his lightsaber and was determined not to kill his father. So this part of the flashback does make sense while adding more depth to Luke's character, but it's the events that happen after that don't add up. So how was young Kylo able to get through Jedi Master Luke Skywalker and massacre all of his apprentices? Are you telling me that in this moment Kylo was so powerful that not even Luke could stop him from doing all this? I call BS. This doesn't make any sense. Also in Episode 8, from the dialogue we get from Luke and his all-around attitude, it just seems like he's given up. This is contrary to Episode 7 when Rey is told that he is the only hope left for the galaxy and would help her. I mean, he kind of, sort of, ends up training her anyway, but whatever. It's just not like Luke to give up after being defeated. I mean, he fought Vader again in Return of the Jedi after getting his shit rocked in Empire Strikes Back. Alright, so you boys and girls knew this was coming up. Let's talk about the whole Snoke death scene. I think this scene should be kept minus his death. I'll get to the reason why later. When I first saw the scene where Kylo betrays Snoke, then fights alongside Rey, I thought, okay, Rian Johnson is really trying to break the mold here. I respect it. He's going to do the unthinkable and change how we look at Star Wars. Oh, he's still evil and wants Rey to join him. Darn. I mean, think about it. This would have led to so many cool outcomes and questions. Like, will Kylo stay truly converted? What will his role be in the Resistance? Who is the new big boss? Is the big boss still Snoke, but that was just a fake body? This segment only serves the purpose to get us hyped for actual change in the Star Wars formula, whether it be good or bad, only to all of a sudden say, lol trolled tee-hee. I kind of felt betrayed watching this scene, not gonna lie. This was one of the last chances Rian had to give Kylo some actual development in this movie, but sadly it didn't happen. Instead of using Snoke or Luke's death as a catalyst to give Kylo a full transition into the light or dark side, at the end of this movie he is still a sad and confused teenager like he was in The Force Awakens. For Rey, her fix is simple. Just give her actual substance that explains her powers. If she's going to do all these sick Force moves like a real Jedi, then this movie needs to also show her doing some equally sick Jedi training. Alright, so the juicy part of the video. What would I change? First, going back to the flashback scene, there should be an extended flashback where instead of Ben being implied to have overpowered Luke here, explain that Luke had no choice but to subdue Ben by knocking him out or whatever. Snoke senses all of this and chooses to land on the planet himself and make his presence known to Luke. Have Luke go to where Snoke is only to see him fly away, and then Luke comes back to his temple only to see Kylo had already come to and killed everyone. Then of course that leads to Luke understanding his failure and going into hiding onto Act 2, but for slightly different reasons than in the movie. Instead of him going to Act 2 to die, he goes there to await a person that is worthy enough to be trained by him in order to defeat Kylo and Snoke. I think it'd be cool to see Luke explain that he's not powerful enough to take on both Snoke and Kylo together. This would also hype Snoke up as a grave threat like Palpatine. Then you could have Luke actually give Rey some extended training to fix her character and not just make her the ultimate Mary Sue. I mean, even a training montage of different stuff he teaches her would be better than sit on this rock and meditate for 1 second, now you are a full-fledged Jedi and can lift giant boulders. And then after training we have Rey leave the planet and get captured just like in the movie. Have Snoke initially do all that ragdoll crap to Rey with the Force, but all while he talks of his dark side philosophy and gives hints to his beliefs, where he got his power from, and his ties to other dark side users. It can be very vague, but at least give us something that the novels and comics can later go into more detail about. Anyway, Snoke then realizes that Rey won't budge yet, so he decides to lock her up. But this time, monitored on a screen without any guards around her so that she is prevented from Jedi mind tricking someone near her. So Snoke doesn't die here yet in my version? No. Well, not yet anyway. So then we'd go back to Luke, who had previously warned Rey not to go alone and that she wasn't ready yet, but then she stubbornly refuses and sneaks off by herself, resulting in her now confinement under the Supreme Leader. That's when Luke decides to burn the tree with the Jedi knowledge for good while being watched by the Force ghost of Yoda, who nods in agreement or something similar. Okay, so here's where the big differences come into play. You guys remember that X-Wing that Rey sees underwater? Well, instead of Luke coming in to save the day by using a lame Force projection, have this epic scene of him pulling up the X-Wing with the Force, and then he uses that to travel to the Salt Planet. So things then play out like usual with the Resistance at their backs about to get bodied by Kylo and company. Then all of a sudden, people see this rogue X-Wing come in out of nowhere. There's a command to shoot it down, but Kylo stops the soldiers from proceeding. He senses Luke and tells the command that he will take care of things himself. Luke exits his ship to be met with Kylo face to face, while Resistance and First Order troops both talk about how crazy it is that the legendary Luke Skywalker himself just showed up. There's some dialogue, and then the fight begins with some lightsaber clashing, and then somewhere down the line, Luke force pushes Kylo away. That's the moment he realizes that he cannot win against Luke and orders the ATs to fire at him. Luke, being the badass that he is, blocks all these blasts by creating a small force field around himself. But while he is defending, Kylo begins pulling Luke towards him with the Force to try and take advantage of this opportunity. When Kylo finally gets close enough to strike, Luke uses Force Repulse to send Kylo flying and some of the blast fire back at the ATs. Luke begins walking towards Kylo, getting closer and closer, all while each time Kylo tries to stand up, Luke pushes him back to the ground with the Force. This is repeated until Luke finally is looking over him ready to strike him down. But before he can, Kylo sees a vision of Luke killing him in his sleep like he thought he was going to do on that night. Kylo then lets out a scream of rage and Luke's body stops. It's revealed by Kylo's outstretched hand that this wasn't voluntary by Luke and he had stopped it himself. The same thing he did to Rey back in episode 7, he is now doing to Luke. All of a sudden we cut to Snoke looking surprised at first, then laughing. It appears that he was the one who forced this memory out of Kylo at the last second and had been watching the fight the entire time. He was now content that his student had finally fully embraced the dark side and would no longer waver. Kylo stands up with hate in his eyes as he strikes his enemy, as Luke closes his eyes in acceptance and returns to the Force. Right after that, we see the Millennium Falcon fly into screen. It's Rey, hooray! But how is she here? Well, to backtrack a little bit, Rey meditated in her chamber and was able to locate a trooper with the Force and Jedi mind trick him from a range and escape. The guy on duty watching Rey asks the man who lets her out what he's doing, and Rey makes him say that he's taking her to Snoke. The guy watching accepts this excuse and goes on his merry way, while Rey then proceeds to knock the trooper out and successfully sneaks out of there. But then I guess the problem with this is, how does Snoke not notice? Well, let's just say at this point he is absorbed in watching the Salt Planet stuff take place. So yeah, Rey is here now and sees Luke's robe and saber hilt just slaying there, with Kylo looking up at her with a wicked smile. Rey flies down and forces Luke's lightsaber into her hand, because at this point Anakin's lightsaber would still be in possession of Snoke. And she's ready to fight when Luke as a Force ghost tells Rey that the Resistance needs her help and she must make a choice. Either fight here, or help the Resistance fight for another day. She chooses the latter, of course, and gets back in her ship and flies off getting shot at, but barely making it out like every Star Wars movie. Then she does the whole lifting boulder thing, albeit making more sense now because she would have actually gotten some training before all this. They escape, woohoo. Then the next scene. Kylo Ren walks up to Snoke and bows. Snoke expresses his pleasure with Kylo that he took his final step into becoming an evil boy and tells him to come closer and stand beside him. When he does this, Snoke explains that now they can rule together as once Palpatine and Vader did. This will harken back to one of the first scenes where Snoke tells Kylo that he is just a Vader wannabe, resulting in Kylo destroying his mask. Kylo will then look at Snoke and say, "Not together." As he says this, he will point his lightsaber towards Snoke's head. Snoke will look surprised at first, but then let out a slight smile. Then in a flash, Kylo ignites his lightsaber and impales him. He then picks up Anakin's lightsaber and looks at it for a second, then slices it in two where it lay split, revealing the blue kyber crystal. Kylo then steps on it, shattering it. He is now the new Supreme Leader. General Hux then enters the throne room shocked, and before he can run away, gets force choked by Kylo, who is not even looking at him, nor is he throwing up any hands. He turns his head to the side, only to say, "It is time. Summon the Knights of Ren." And the last scene can really be whatever and have the same effect. Let's just say the Resistance goons minus Leia are chilling on the Falcon during sad boy hours. I say minus Leia because she would have died at this one scene. You know what scene I'm talking about. Rey then says something cool and inspirational while the rest nod in agreement. Roll credits at the end. Well, 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 that was a very long and unorganized explanation of my ideal version of the movie. Did you like it more than the actual movie? Did you like it less? Tell me why in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear some opinions on this. Anyway, please leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Okay, thanks for watching, bye bye.